Hello, I'm John Nicholson. Welcome to my YouTube channel, week 3. And I think we should talk about Trump, don't you? I mean, it's what journalists across the world and politicians too are talking about. Let's talk about the trade war in a second or two. The trade war that he's ignited by imposing tariffs on China and threatening to impose tariffs on his two closest neighbours. But I thought we could start this week with the terrible plane and helicopter crash in Washington. Every single person in the plane and the helicopter has died. And in previous years, in previous disasters, American presidents serve as the comforter in chief. And I'm talking about presidents from both parties. When there's a disaster, they go to the site of the disaster. They talk to the rescue workers and offer them encouragement. And they meet relatives of people who've been killed. Reagan famously did it when the Challenger crashed. Clinton was very impressive in these moments. Jimmy Carter too, and Obama. All of them found the words to comfort the nation, the United States, at times of great national mourning. But my goodness, Trump. I mean, his first instinct, and a lot of people have said this is why he may well be a sociopath. He doesn't seem to be able to express or feel any empathy. He didn't seem to feel sorry for the people who died or their relatives. His first instinct was, bizarrely, with no evidence whatsoever, to blame the plane crash on folk with mental disabilities whom he said had been hired in the air traffic control centre. I mean, this is nonsense. We don't know yet what the cause of this was. There's some suggestion it was helicopter pilot error, a military helicopter, because it wasn't in its correct flight path. Those are early soundings. We don't know this for certain. The black boxes have been recovered, and in due course, we'll discover. But what is certainly not the case is that people with mental disabilities are responsible for this crash. Now, what I think in his jumbled mind he was thinking about was that the air traffic control are hiring people with different types of challenges. So in the past, if you were in a wheelchair, you would never have been hired. And the agency responsible now has an equal rights employment policy. But of course, they're not hiring people to control the planes from the towers who have mental health disabilities. Of course, they're not doing that. But his first instinct was to attack the vulnerable and the weak. And I was just thinking how awful it must be for the people, the poor people, who've suffered this monumental loss in their lives, losing loved ones, to have the president appearing to blame vulnerable people for their bereavement and grief. And then when he was asked at a press conference if he's going to go to visit where the rescue workers are working, he said, and of course, you'll know that the plane crashed into the water in Washington. And his response was grotesque. His response was, "What do you want me to do? Go swimming?" I mean, who would say that about people who'd died when their plane crashed into the water? I think even seasoned Trump watchers found it astonishing and distressing. And another example of his complete unsuitability for the office that he now holds. This week as well, we've been watching Trump's choices for some of the great jobs in the power of the American president to give. Cabinet picks, for example. And the one that I'm sure you watched, I watched too, was RFK Jr, Robert Kennedy, his son, and he's going to be put in charge of health if Trump has his way. Now, RFK is a conspiracy theorist. He has for decades said that vaccinations are not safe. Now, We've all had vaccinations in the United Kingdom. We know that vaccinations are safe. Crucially, RFK's children have all been vaccinated. But he said on video some time ago that if he had to go back and relive some of his decisions, he would no longer vaccinate his children. He would expose them to the dangers of polio, for example. He claimed entirely falsely that polio vaccinations kill more people than polio. It's nonsense. But at the hearing, when he was cross-examined about some of his past claims, he tried to row back and deny, and he said that he was in favour of vaccinations. It's just a combination of disinformation and lies. And not just that, we've discovered quite a lot about him in recent days, partly because his sister and his cousin, John F. Kennedy's daughter, have come out and said what they think about him as a man. We learn, for example, that he used to torture animals when he was a young man. And I don't know about you, but I've got friends who are lawyers who say that one recurring theme that they find when people are charged with violent crime in adulthood is that they've quite often got a childhood or youth history of animal cruelty. So we've learned that about him. We also discovered that he knew absolutely nothing about America's healthcare system as it currently exists, Medicaid. He didn't seem to understand the details of it. But just the idea that you'd put this man, with his appalling record, in charge of America's health, the most expensive health system in the Western world, with one of the poorest health outcomes, of course it needs reform. And he's clearly not the person to do it. And we've discovered in the last 24 hours as well, because some of the senators were asking him to explain his misconduct cases that we've discovered, 2 in particular, where he's asked people to sign non-disclosure agreements after reaching financial settlement with them. And one, if not both of them, appear to be for sexual assault. Utterly appalling. This man should be nowhere near high office, and I very much hope that he won't be. Finally, trade wars. Trump for decades has been obsessed with the idea of tariffs, imposing tariffs. Now, during the election campaign, he said that both that he would impose tariffs on China, Mexico and Canada, and that he would bring down food and other prices in America. Well, you just can't have both. They contradict one another, because it's not China that pays the tariffs. It's Americans who pay the tariffs on goods imported from China or Mexico or Canada. And we've seen the result. Today, China has imposed retaliatory tariffs on American goods. So consumers in America will already start to feel the pinch. Mexico and Canada have also threatened retaliation. Some Canadian states have already begun to punish American companies. There's a 30-day freeze on this, but a whole host of products will be affected. Car prices in America will go up. Price of tequila will go up. Canada provides fuel to the United States. Those prices will go up. For the American consumer, prices will go up for a pointless trade war that's seen the stock market tumble in North America and across the world. He's also threatened that he will impose tariffs on the European Union. If ever there was a time for the UK to be safely embedded in the European Union, with the strength of that trading bloc, now would be the time. But of course, Brexit means that we're isolated and vulnerable to Trump's whims. So that's week 2 of Trump. Thank you for subscribing. Please feel free to add comments, and of course, I'll respond to all the comments I get.